Hello, I'm Professor Sims. In this video, we will discuss nervous system infections. The learning objectives for this unit are going to be describing the major anatomical features of the nervous system, explaining how microorganisms overcome defenses of the nervous system, identifying and describing general symptoms associated with various infections of the nervous system. We'll talk about the most common bacterial infections, the most common acellular pathogens, and also the most common fungal infections of the nervous system. The brain and spinal cord make up the central nervous system, also known as the CNS. The peripheral nervous system, also known as the PNS, this is composed of motor nerves and sensory nerves. The cerebrospinal fluid is produced by structures and cavities inside the brain and flows out over the brain and spinal cord. Meninges are the membranes that cover the surface of the brain and the spinal cord. So this is figure 26.2 showing the essential components of the human nervous system. This is the PNS and the CNS here. Figure 26.3 is showing the meninges, or the layers of tissue surrounding the human brain. So this is going to include the dura mater, the arachnoid mater, and the pia mater. Tissues of the peripheral nervous system and central nervous system are formed of cells called glial cells and neurons. Figure 26.4, this is showing a myelinated neuron associated with oligodendrocyte, right? So this here is your oligodendrocyte. These are myelin sheaths. This is dendrite, the cell body. Oligodendrocytes are a type of glial cell that form the myelin sheath in the CNS, and it insulates the axon so that electrochemical nerve impulses are transferred more efficiently. A synapse consists of the axonal end of the presynaptic neuron, which is at the top here, presynaptic neuron, that release neurotransmitters that cross the synaptic space, or cleft, and bind to receptors on dendrites of the postsynaptic neuron, which is down here at the bottom. Since the blood-brain barrier excludes most microbes, there's no normal microbiota in the central nervous system. But some pathogens have specific virulence factors that allow them to breach the blood-brain barrier. Microbes penetrate the blood-brain barrier via the cytoplasm of nerve cell axons and also via direct extension through bone. Inflammation of the brain or meninges caused by infection is called encephalitis or meningitis, respectively. So inflammation of the brain is encephalitis. Inflammation of the meninges is meningitis. And these conditions can cause blindness, deafness, coma, and even death. Bacteria can infect the brain, spinal cord, and peripheral nerves, but more commonly they infect the meninges and cerebrospinal fluid, causing meningitis. Symptoms of bacterial meningitis include fever, neck stiffness, headache, confusion, convulsions, coma, and death. Diagnosis of meningitis is done usually through cultures, and they're looking for organisms in the cerebrospinal fluid. Bacterial meningitis is not very common, but it used to be that most victims of bacterial meningitis were children. But childhood immunization has decreased the incidence of these age groups. In most but not all meningitis victims, the causative bacteria is one commonly found among normal upper respiratory flora of healthy people. So this is yet another example of normal flora that can get into the wrong place and cause infection. Bacterial meningitis can be treated with antibiotics, and some of them even have vaccines that are available. So the vaccines is the main reason why incidence in young children has decreased dramatically over the years. Bacterial meningitis is caused by several different encapsulated bacteria. So this is giving some examples here. The Haemophilus influenza, Bacterial meningitis, Streptococcus pneumoniae, Streptococcus galactiae. This is the group B Streptococci. Your H. influenzae affects primarily young children. Your N. meningitis is the only communicable pathogen, and which means it is from human to human, and it mostly affects children and young adults. Your streptococcal pneumoniae affects mostly young children, again, and your B group streptococci affects newborns. Figure 26.5 is showing a normal human brain on the left, and on the right it's showing the brain of a patient who died from bacterial meningitis. Note the pus under the dura mater and the red hemorrhagic foci on the meninges. Greatly feared because it can result in shock and death. Meningococcal meningitis can occur in both childhood and in adult epidemics. Symptoms are similar to other forms of meningitis, so they're like cold symptoms that are followed by abrupt onset of fever, severe headache, pain, stiffness in the neck and in the back, also nausea and vomiting, small hemorrhages in the skin, deafness, and coma can occur. The bacterium Neisseria meningitis causes a massive peripheral nervous system response. Metabolic activity of the leukocytes and bacteria consumes glucose that's normally present in the cerebrospinal fluid, and shock results from the release of endotoxin into the bloodstream. The majority of meningococcal infections are limited to the nose and throat, and most of them go unnoticed. But if a selective media is used to suppress the growth of other nasopharyngeal flora, meningococcal species can be recovered from the throats of 5 to 15% of apparently healthy people. Clostridium species cause neurological diseases, including botulism and tetanus, by producing potent neurotoxins that interfere with neurotransmitter release. The peripheral nervous system is typically effective. Treatment of Clostridium infections is effective only through early diagnosis with administration of antibiotics to control infection and antitoxins to neutralize the endotoxin before they can enter the cells. Botulism is not a nervous system infection, but it's often a fatal type of food poisoning that can cause severe generalized paralysis. The causative bacterium, Clostridium botulinum, is an anaerobic gram-positive rod that forms heat-resistant endospores, and these spores can survive canning or other heat treatment of foods, and then they germinate and they multiply and they release a powerful toxin into the food. Because of strict controls on food processing, intestinal botulism is now the most common form of the disease in the United States. Relatively mild symptoms result from C. botulinum. Colonization of the intestine of infants and even some adults. Wound botulism caused when C. botulinum colonizes dirty wounds containing dead tissue. This is quite rare. So this figure here is showing some symptoms of botulism. You can have some paralysis and some of your nerves, especially facial nerves. You can have double vision, slurred speech, tachycardia, muscle weakness, problems urinating, nausea, vomiting. These are all caused by Clostridium botulinum. Tetanus is a serious illness caused by Clostridium bacterium. The bacteria live in soil, saliva, dust, and manure. The bacteria can enter the body through a deep cut, like those you might get from stepping on a nail, or through a burn. Tetanus causes painful tightening of the muscles, usually all over the body. So figure 26.9 here is showing a tetanus patient that is exhibiting rigid body posture. What it essentially means is that your muscles are contracting and you can't make them relax. And it is extremely painful. Listeria monocytogenes. Listeria monocytogenes is a foodborne pathogen that can infect the central nervous system, causing meningitis. The infection can be spread through the placenta to a fetus, and diagnosis is through culture of the blood or the cerebrospinal fluid. Treatment is with antibiotics, and there's no vaccine. Hansen's disease, leprosy, is caused by the intracellular parasite Mycobacterium leprae. Infections cause demyelinization of neurons, resulting in decreased sensation in peripheral appendages and body sites. Treatment is with multi-drug antibiotic therapy, and there's no universally recognized vaccine. Listeriosis is caused by Listeria monocytogenes, a non-spore-forming gram-positive rod. It is a foodborne illness, and it often manifests as meningitis in newborn infants and in others. The bacteria is widespread. It's commonly in contaminated foods such as non-pasteurized milk, cold cuts, soft cheeses, and it can grow in the refrigerator. Listeria is able to use host cell components to cause infection. For example, phagocytosis allows it to enter host cells, and the host cytoskeleton provides the materials to help the pathogen move to other cells. And the bacteria readily penetrate the intestinal epithelium and enter the bloodstream and infect the meninges. So figure 2610 here, on the left it's showing an electron micrograph, and then on the right it's showing how Listeria is using host cell components to proliferate and cause infection. Hansen's disease is characterized by invasion of peripheral nerves by the acid-fast bacillus Mycobacterium leprae, which has not been cultivated in vitro. The disease occurs in two main forms. You have tuberculoid and lepromatous, depending on the immune status of the patient. Figure 2611 shows on the left here is the nose of a patient with Hansen's disease. And you can see the lesions around the nostril here. And then, of course, on the right, you can see the Mycobacterium leprae, which is these little purple gram-positive bacillus. Viral meningitis is more common and generally less severe than bacterial meningitis. It can result from secondary sequestering of many viruses and can be caused by infections of arboviruses. Various types of arboviral encephalitis are concentrated in particular geographic locations throughout the world. They are mosquito-borne viral infections of the nervous system, and they're typically mild but can be life-threatening in some cases. Most viral nervous system infections are caused by human enteroviruses or by the viruses of certain zoonoses. Enteroviruses maintained in Aedes mosquitoes and squirrels and other mammals is frequently reported. Figure 2613 is showing a false color transmission electron micrograph of a mosquito salivary gland cell, and it's showing the infection of the Eastern equine encephalitis virus, which is here in the red. CT and MRI scans of the brains of children with Eastern equine encephalitis infections are showing abnormalities resulting from the infection. So on the left here are CT scans, on the right here are MRIs, and everywhere where the arrow is pointing, it's showing abnormalities in the brain caused by encephalitis. The Zika virus is an emerging arboviral infection with generally mild symptoms in most individuals, but infections of pregnant women can cause birth defects and lead to microcephaly. Polio is typically a mild intestinal infection, but it can be damaging or fatal if it progresses to a neurological disease. Rabies is nearly always fatal when untreated and remains a significant problem worldwide. Transmissible spongiform encephalopathies such as Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease and Kuru are caused by prions. These diseases are untreatable and ultimately fatal. Similar prion diseases are found in animals. So everything on this slide here is very serious neurological disease, and almost all of them can be fatal. Zika virus disease is caused by a virus transmitted primarily by Aedes mosquitoes, which bite during the day. Symptoms are generally mild and include fever, rash, conjunctivitis, muscle and joint pain, malaise, or headache. Figure 2614 is showing an electron micrograph of the Zika virus particles here in red. Women infected by the Zika virus during pregnancy may give birth to children with microcephaly. Microcephaly is a deformity characterized by an abnormally small head and brain. So that's shown here. This is normal infant, and this is an infant that was born with microcephaly. Rabies is a widespread zoonosis that is transmitted to humans mainly through the bite of an infected animal. Once symptoms appear in an infected human being, the disease is almost uniformly fatal. Because of the long incubation period of rabies, prompt immunization with inactivated vaccine is effective in preventing the disease. Passive immunization given at the time that the patient has been bitten just as soon as possible. This will increase the level of protection. So in figure 2615, you can see the rabies virus that has a bullet shape, which is kind of ironic as it is a deadly disease. Figure 2616 is showing the Emerson respiratory or iron lung that's used to help. It used to be used quite widely for polio victims to help them breathe. Poliomyelitis causes destruction of motor nerve cells of the brain and spinal cord. It leads to paralysis, muscle wasting, and failure of normal bone development. On the right here of this figure, it's showing a young child that's undergoing physical therapy, and this was due to the muscle wasting and impaired motor function caused by polio. The spongiform encephalopathies are a group of rare diseases characterized by sponge-like appearance of brain tissue caused by loss of nerve cells. They afflict a variety of wild and domestic animals as well as humans. Brain and other tissues from afflicted animals can transmit the disease to the same or sometimes to other species. A new form of the disease appeared in humans during an epidemic of mad cow disease in the United Kingdom recently. The main symptoms are progressive loss of muscle control and dementia. Encephalopathies are caused by prions, which are improperly folded proteins. And this here is showing a cross-section of brain tissue from an infected individual. And you can see that there literally are holes in the tissue, which is why it's called spongiform. It looks quite like a sponge. Neuromycoses are uncommon in immunocompetent people, but immunocompromised individuals with fungal infections have high mortality rates due to neuromycosis. Treatment of neuromycoses require prolonged therapy with antifungal drugs at low doses in order to avoid side effects and to overcome the effect of the blood-brain barrier. Some protist infections of the nervous systems are fatal if not treated, including primary amoebic meningitis, granulomatous amoebic encephalitis, human African trypanosomiasis, and neurotoxoplasmosis. The various forms of amoebic encephalitis caused by the different amoebic infections are fatal even with treatment, but thankfully they are rare. African trypanosomiasis is a serious but treatable disease endemic to two distinct regions in sub-Saharan Africa and caused by insect-borne hemoflagellant Trypanosoma brucei. Neurocysticercosis is treated using antihelminthic drugs or surgery to remove the large cyst from the central nervous system. So this is figure 2621. Again, this is a nice table that summarizes diseases, causative agents, signs and symptoms, how it's transmitted, diagnostic tests, and antimicrobial drugs that are used to treat them. And these are all fungal and or parasitic diseases of the nervous system. Fungi rarely invade the nervous system of healthy people, but they can be a threat to the life of individuals with underlying diseases such as diabetes, cancer, and other immunodeficiencies. Treatment of fungal infections is usually very difficult. Infection originates in the lung after a person inhales dust laden with Cryptococcus neoformanis. Cryptococcus neoformanis is an encapsulated yeast, Cryptococcus neoformanis is a encapsulated yeast which resists phagocytosis because of its large capsule. The organism is associated with soil contaminated with pigeon droppings. Figure 2620 here is showing a negative stain of C. neoformans, and it's showing these halos, these white circles around the cells are very thick capsules that help to protect it from your immune system. Only a few free-living protozoa infect the human nervous system. Certain parasitic protozoa are a much more widespread threat. So figure 2622 is showing a free-living amoeba in human brain tissue from a patient that was suffering from infection by Naegleria fowleri. Naegleria fowleri infects people when water containing the amoeba enters the body through the nose, and it typically occurs when people go swimming or diving in warm, fresh water like lakes and rivers. The amoeba then travels up the nose to the brain, where it then destroys brain tissue. Balamuphia mandrillaris is a free-living amoeba naturally found in the environment. Balamuphia can cause a rare and serious infection of the brain and spinal cord called granulomatous amoebic encephalitis, or GAE. Figure 2623 shows the brain tissue from a patient who died of this infection. And if you look here on the right, you can see the necrosis in the center of the brain. African sleeping sickness is a major health problem in a wide area across equatorial Africa. In its late stages, marked by indifference, sleepiness, coma, and then, of course, death. The disease is caused by Trypanosoma brucei, a flagellated protozoan that lives in the blood of its victims and in its biological vector, the tsetse fly. During infection, the organism shows bursts of growth, each appearing with different surface proteins. The organism has more than 1,000 genes coding for these antigens, but only expresses one at a time. Each antigen requires that the body respond with a new antibody. So this is figure 2624. It's showing the causative agent of African sleeping sickness in a human blood smear. Toxoplasmosis is a disease that results from infection with the Toxoplasma gondii parasite, and this is one of the world's most common parasites. Infection usually occurs by eating undercooked contaminated meat, exposure from infected cat feces, or from mother to child transmission during pregnancy. Figure 2625 is showing the Toxoplasma gondii cyst observed in mouse brain tissue, and it contains thousands of inactivated parasites. Neurocysticercosis is a preventable parasitic infection caused by larval cysts, which are enclosed sacs that contain the immature stage of a parasite. Its common name is the pork tapeworm. Its scientific name is the Taenia solium. The larval cysts can infect various parts of the body, causing a condition known as cysticercosis. And figure 2626 here is showing the brain CT scan of the sagittal and axial sections of a brain with neurocysticercosis. Numerous cysts are visible in both images as indicated by the arrows. So all of these are cysts caused by this infection. So figure 2627, again, this is a nice little table. You should absolutely know the names of these diseases, the pathogen that causes them, general signs and symptoms for each of them, how they're transmitted, how they're diagnosed, and what antimicrobial drugs are used to treat them. So that's going to do it for our very last lesson in pathogenic microbiology. I want to thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to do your reading. Check the description below this video for more videos related to these topics, and leave your questions for me in the comments below.